So during the last 5 weeks, during Advent and Christmas, we've been reflecting or reclaiming the prophetic dimension of Jesus' ministry. How Jesus saw himself as part of this great Hebrew prophetic tradition. And he was shaped by the writings of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Malachi, Zephaniah, and others. Today, as we remember the wise men from the east, the Magi, on this Epiphany Sunday, I thought it would be a good opportunity to consider another tradition that's a part of Jesus, and that was very much something he saw himself a part of, and that is the Hebrew wisdom tradition. Jesus was also shaped by the writings of the teacher in Ecclesiastes, the author of the book of Job, and the many proverbs that are part of the Old Testament. And in fact, one of the titles given to Jesus, one of the first titles was given to him was Moshel Moshelim, which means teacher of wisdom. It was a very common title in the Near East and part of the Jewish tradition. And these were wisdom teachers who taught through parables and stories and little sayings that people could hold on to, called mashal. Well, Jesus was a Moshel Moshelim. He came as a prophet, but also as a wisdom teacher to awaken us to the big picture, to the deeper meaning and purpose of life. And like then, today, there are some of us who want to be awakened, and there are many of us who don't. But wisdom is about awakening. Today we live in what has been called the information age. We have more information at our fingertips than ever before. You can Google search how many home runs Babe Ruth hit in 1927, how many Oscar nominations Meryl Streep has, and you can get that within seconds. It's unbelievable what information we have at our fingertips. I learned recently that every 10 minutes of the information age, we generate as much information as had been generated from the beginning of time until the beginning of the information age. Think about that for a second. Every 10 minutes, we double, triple, quadruple that, and it's been going like that for a number of years. There's so much information out there. And that I suspect you've probably discovered, as I have, you can't Google the big questions. There aren't easy answers at our fingertips for the big questions of our lives. And maybe you're like me, you're hungering for something more than information, more than knowledge. And that something more, our tradition has understood to be wisdom. Wisdom. There's something about wisdom. The book of Proverbs teaches the student, "My child, eat honey, for it is good, and the drippings of the honeycomb are sweet to your taste. Know that wisdom is such for your soul. If you find it, you will find a future, and your hope will not be cut off." I have to confess that there is nothing that I long for more. There's nothing more delicious to me. There's nothing more beautiful to me than wisdom. And you know it when you see it. You can't always understand it or articulate it, but you know when you're in the presence of wisdom. And for me, there's nothing more beautiful than being in the presence of wise people. Now, wisdom is different than intelligence and knowledge and book smarts. It may be at your fingertips, but you can't grasp it. You can't Google search for it. It can only be gained over time. It's a gift, and it's not given to everyone. That's the catch. Wisdom is not always given, and it is not for everyone. There are young people who are wise beyond their years, and there are older people who are complete fools. Wisdom is earned over time. It's given out over a lifetime. So today I want to honor the wise men in our stories by reflecting on wise people and what the common habits of wise people are. And I borrow from some work from Frank Powell, who identified 9 common habits from the scriptures about what wise people do and believe. And my prayer is by sharing these common habits, we will all be better able to recognize when life is inviting us into wisdom, so that we can all have a little more courage to go to those places where wisdom is given and wisdom is received, so that we can taste a little bit more that sweetness of what a wise life looks and feels like. So that when wisdom wants to show itself, rather than run away, we can enter in wholeheartedly to that learning opportunity. So 9 habits, and I'll move through them quickly. Number 1, wise people accept uncertainty and the unknown. Have you discovered that the most important things in life are a complete mystery? Holding your child or your grandchild for the first time, hearing your lover's heartbeat against yours, holding a dying parent's hand as they leave this planet, watching a marriage ceremony between people who have no idea what's before them, standing out and looking upon the Grand Canyon, watching a butterfly emerge from a chrysalis. Mystery, 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 mystery. Life is a mystery to be appreciated, not a problem to be solved. There's no manual for living a wise life, but there is a great tool, and that tool is attentiveness, paying attention to what is happening now. That's the tool we need to become wise. I remember when I was beginning in wisdom, I was seeing a spiritual director, and we did a lot of processing of those early bumps in the road, and he would always say, "Mark, the work teaches you how to do it." The work teaches us how to do it. Life teaches us how to live it, but we have to be open to the unknown, to the mystery, rather than try to fit life into our little boxes, which are safer. They make us feel more secure, but they blind us to mystery. Number 2, wise people seek humility and embrace wonder and curiosity. I love that line from Leanne Womack's "I Hope You'll Dance," which goes, "I hope you'll still feel small when you stand beside the ocean." Wise people understand their place in the big picture, and they don't want to lose touch with that place. They know that they can't lose touch with that place, because there's nothing that cuts us off more from wisdom than believing we're the center of the universe, or believing that we have everything figured out and we know better than everybody else. And yet there's nothing that opens us up to wisdom more than cultivating childlike attentiveness and curiosity and wonder, being teachable at every age and stage of our lives, being willing to always stand in awe at the glory of God's world and creation. Number 3, wise people don't allow success to define them. Thomas Merton said, we spend our whole lives climbing the ladder of success only to discover that it's leaning against the wrong wall. Now, wise people understand there's nothing inherently wrong about climbing the ladder of success, but we're not going to find a lot of wisdom there. We're not going to find a lot of wisdom if we're just focused on climbing. One of my mentors likes to say, after the age of 30, we stop learning from success. We only learn from failure. Chew on that for a while. We only learn when we mess up, when we make mistakes, when we thought we knew and we realized we didn't, when we thought we had it figured out and now we know we didn't. That's how we learn after the age of 30. And why is that? Because in those moments, we got to let go of the lens to which we've been looking at life through. We realize we either got to cleanse it or get a whole new lens. And that's how we grow. Number 4, wise people accept the finality of life. I would argue that there is probably not a culture today in this world that is more afraid of death than American culture. We celebrate youth, we glorify youth, we buy and sell the illusion that we can stay young for the rest of our life as if that was attractive. I mean, I had a wonderful youth, but I don't want to go back there. And yet, that's what we're sold. We're said you can be young forever. And so much of our culture is based upon this idea. But wise people don't waste time and energy trying to be young. They learn to number their days. They learn to keep death ever before them, not in a morbid way, but in a way that allows them to be clear-sighted and open-hearted to every stage of life and the gifts that they're there. Wise people learn to accept, even to embrace their mortality. If you were here a couple months ago to hear Dr. Bill Thomas, he was saying the same thing. He said that we think that the good life is a life that is limitless, without limits, as life is when you're young, and there's something glorious about that and exhilarating. But here's what he said. The truth is that limits are what give life its meaning. Limits is what we bump up against. That opens us up to real life. Wisdom grows not by denying limits, not like by pretending that limits don't exist, but by embracing them, even giving thanks for the limits that are part of real life. Number 5, wise people value character over reputation. In communities like us, there are a few control freaks among us, right? But let me give you a secret. The only thing we can control is our character. We can control whether we're living lives of integrity or not. We can control who we are, how we respond to situations, who we want to become, who we are becoming. Those are things that are within each of our control. And wise people understand that every choice that we make, every email we send, every tweet that we tweet, every Facebook post that we post is a step towards integrity or a step away from it. Every choice matters. It helps shape our character and our integrity. In the end, people will inevitably misunderstand us. They will praise us when we ought to be criticized. They'll criticize us when we ought to be praised. And the wise among us are open to praise and criticism, but they're not slaves to it. They're not slaves to it. Number 6, wise people listen and ask questions. It's been said that a good question is the best traveling companion. I love that. Most of us aren't asking good questions of our lives, of our experience of life, of God. A good question is a good companion. If we're asking good questions, we're headed somewhere. If we're not going anywhere. It's been said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's the irony of a preacher saying that. But we ought to speak less and listen more. And ask the kinds of questions that we don't know the answers to. Wise people are willing to ask questions that they may never get an answer to. Rilke teaches his young poet, learn to have patience with all those things unresolved in your heart and learn to live the questions. Learn to love and treasure the questions as a wonderful traveling companion, leading us on a quest for truth that will never, ever disappoint. Number 7, wise people never lose hope, ever. I struggled with this one a little bit because I hate to use the word never, ever, always, because invariably those let you down. But I think there's something here. Wise people are like prophets. They see things that we don't see or don't want to see or can't see or are afraid of seeing. Wise people look beneath the surface. They listen in the silence between the words, and they look to the reality beyond reality, and they touch upon something solid in the most frightening and uncertain situations. The wise people see clearly what is eternally true. that there's nothing we can do to separate us from the love of God, that God is present in every circumstance, in every encounter, in every person, in every experience of our lives, and we can either open ourselves to that reality or shut down, and the wise learn to open up, and because God is present, we can have hope in every circumstance that we're going through. Wise people see the more. They recognize they're being sustained by that more always, and that there's something good and loving that's always present in every circumstance. And so they have hope. And it's grounded in the deepest reality of a good God. Number 8, wise people surround themselves with hopeful, life-giving people. You've heard the cliche, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. There's something to that. It's a cliche because there's truth in it. How many of us live in our little bubbles, in our little social media worlds with people who think like us, whether we're on the left or on the right, and these little bubbles get so snarky and we get so excited because we got our next zinger, and then we go, the same thing's going on the other side. We live in this really negative universe and we love it and we get excited about it, but in the end, what good does it do? Surrounding ourselves with negativity on the liberal side or the conservative side just turns us into a negative human being. I'm interested in community with people who want to actually work together in a constructive way and in a hope-filled way to make the future better by dealing with the problems in the present and listening to all people and engaging all people in the great good struggle. Wisdom, like faith, is contagious, and we've got to be around people, particularly people who may not agree with us or see things the way that we do, because wisdom is caught. It's contagious. It's like the good version of the flu. It rubs off on us. Number 9, wise people learn from the past, but they never live there. The opposite of wisdom is nostalgia. I can tell you there's nothing I detest more than nostalgia. Nostalgia sickens me. I mean, it makes me, honestly, I gag when I'm in the presence of nostalgia. Why? Because there's nothing going on in the past. God isn't there. Life isn't there. Nothing, I promise you, nothing is happening there. As the Irish say, the one true thing about the past is it's not in the past. It's right here. It's right here. It's part of the present. And we're invited to seek God in the present. Kierkegaard said that life is understood looking back. There are great lessons that we can learn looking back, but we must look forward. We must live our lives looking forward. And we must seek the wisdom of God right here, right now, in this particular circumstance. Wise people learn from the past, but they refuse to live in the past. They don't abandon the past, they don't run from the past, but they don't live in the past. And so today, as we remember the wise men and women, let's remember their journey began with a question and an observation. Where's this child who's been called King of the Jews? A child king? Are you kidding me? For we have observed the star at its rising. And they embark on a pilgrimage into the unknown, into the mystery. They are teachable. They follow the star's leading. And when they arrive to the place where the star sets, they're overwhelmed with joy in the presence of this child. And they kneel down in awe and wonder and remember their place in the big picture and open up their treasure chests and offer gifts from their hearts. And then while they're asleep, which is the time when most of us are awake to reality, in their sleep, they recognize that Herod's definition of success is not theirs. and they listen to their intuition, and they risk their reputation, and they return to their own country by another road. So as we come to this table, let's remember our hunger for wisdom. Let us taste the drippings of the honeycomb that have been prepared for us by the great Moshelim, Jesus the Christ. And let's come here and rediscover our childlike wonder and ask bigger, better questions of ourselves and of each other and of our lives. And let this great act of the past be fully present today, informing every choice, every decision before us, so that we might remember and awaken to the presence of God right here, right now, so that we can discover the genuine hope that comes from that kind of seeing and that kind of trust. Let us pray. Lord, deepen our hunger and our thirst and our taste for wisdom. Help us to recognize it when we see it. Help us to move towards it even when it frightens us. And help us to surround ourselves with people who will help us live better lives, more hopeful lives, more productive lives. Help us to not accept anything less than the truth, and keep us forever on a pilgrimage in truth's name towards truth. And remind us that we can only succeed in this journey if we go there together and with childlike wonder and awe and curiosity and teachability. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.